Our state is beautiful, is it not? Is it not, right? Yeah, absolutely. Let's just, all right, I'm gonna give us permission to be arrogant for just a second. The other 49 are jealous, are they not? Like they are, right? I mean, Colorado, it's just, man, there's so many beautiful things to see in Colorado. And what's crazy is there's so many places that look completely different, don't they? I mean, if you go to Iowa, okay, nothing wrong with Iowa. If you go to Iowa, for the most part, you're getting a lot of corn, right? Most of Texas looks like Texas. Kansas looks like, I don't know, you can fill in the blank. What do you think Kansas looks like? Oh, did somebody say a sheet of paper? Okay. We love you, Jayhawks. It's great. But Colorado, there's so many different things to see that are all beautiful, and they all look completely different. You know, like the Front Range has a completely different look than the Western Slope, doesn't it? Steamboat looks completely different than the sand dunes. The sand dunes still just blow my mind. That's incredible. So many beautiful places to see that look totally different. One of my absolute favorite views is from the top of a ski slope on a Bluebird day. Anybody else with me on that one? I'm the only skier in Colorado, in church in Colorado. That's weird. No, I mean, you get 360-degree views of mountains that are covered in snow, speckled with green pine trees, blue skies, sunshine. My goodness, I'm all in. I mean, every time I get to see it, my thought is, this is a glimpse of heaven. And then every time I look at that, there's a thought that pops into my mind, and it just blows my mind. The book of Romans says that this 360-degree view of the Rocky Mountains, Romans actually says that's broken. Romans says because of sin, all of creation has been broken, and it's longing to be restored back to its original state of perfection. It's longing to be restored back to paradise. So if that's true, thinking about that means that when I look at the maroon bells, Romans says the maroon bells are broken. What? Or the Collegiate Peaks, as incredible as they are, nah, not even close to as good as they're gonna be. Or Telluride, a place is a dump compared to what it's gonna be. Like, this is crazy. So if that's true, thinking through that, if this is all broken, the landscape we see in our beautiful state, if that's broken, man, I can't wait to see what it looks like when it gets fixed. When it's back to perfection, when it's back to paradise. We have that to look forward to. That's the new heavens and the new earth that Scripture promises and talks about. Right now, all we get is a glimpse. We can just get a small glimpse. So whenever you see a breathtaking landscape in our state, that's just a small glimpse of what heaven's gonna be like. And that glimpse of heaven is not just physical either. Is it possible to get a glimpse of heaven's culture? I mean, just forget the physical for a second. Because whenever we talk about heaven, usually we start thinking about the physical. You know, what's it gonna be like? What's it gonna look like? That's great, put that aside for a second. Is it possible to get a glimpse of the culture of heaven, the redemption, the relational perfection, the overwhelming joy, the excellence, the mosaic of diversity, dwelling with God, the overwhelming feeling of always having complete purpose and meaning? I mean, that's just scratching the surface. Is it possible right now to get a glimpse of heaven's culture? And I think the answer to that question is absolutely. So instead of trying to get to heaven right now, forget that. We're not trying to get to heaven right now. Let's just bring a glimpse of heaven here. That's being Keystone. A Keystone species is a given species in an ecosystem that all life rises and falls on that species. So if an ecosystem has its particular Keystone species, then that ecosystem and all of the life in it can thrive. However, if it doesn't have it, that ecosystem is gonna collapse. Well, the church, Christians are supposed to be the Keystone species in the world, where everything around a church should be transformed for the better, where all people that are around a church should be blessed simply because Christians are there. Now, we unpacked that at the beginning of this series. So my question is, how do we become that? How do we become who God has called us to be as individuals and then also as a church? Like, how do we get to where God is taking us? And the answer to that is our values. Our values as a church allow us to end up somewhere on purpose. Our values as a church allow us to be the Keystone Species in northern Colorado. Our values allow us to create, grow, and then also strengthen our culture as a church so that we can reflect the culture of heaven. We started off with Go for the Bronze a couple weeks ago. And then last week we walked through Get Out of the Boat. If you missed either one of those, I'd highly encourage you to catch up on our website because all 6 of our values, they link together, they interlock together. Well, value number 3 is this. It's make it better. Make it better. That's simply it. And here's what we mean by make it better. We will always go out of our way to make our environments and experiences better in order to give people a glimpse of heaven. We will always go out of our way to make our environments and our experiences better in order to give people a glimpse of heaven. This is all about what we're building and why. Because we're always building. You're always building. You as an individual are always building no matter what. Like you're building in your relationships, maybe good relationships or bad relationships. You're building trust or lack of trust. You're building your business. Even if you're apathetic and disengaged, you're still building. You're just not gonna like the finished product in your relationships or your business or your personal character if you're apathetic and disengaged. But if you're intentional, if you have an aim for excellence, if you're building with the right materials, then you can build some pretty great stuff. And the same thing is true for the church. We're constantly building as a church. We're constantly building, whether we realize it or not. But the question is, what's the finished product gonna look like when our time is up? And that all depends. It depends on our foundation. It depends on how we build. It depends on what we build with. And it depends on our why. Here's where all this comes from. This is 1 Corinthians 3. This is a guy named Paul. He's writing a letter to a church. He says this, because of God's grace to me, I've laid the foundation like an expert builder. No others are building on top of it, but whoever is building this foundation must be very careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one we have already laid, which is Jesus Christ. Anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, or wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, then the builder will receive its reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through the walls of flames. This is not talking about salvation. Salvation's a gift. It's a gift, and you cannot hope that you do a good job and build something awesome that maybe you'll get that gift. No, salvation comes by grace through Jesus alone. That's it. It's a gift. This talks about rewards. There are rewards. And it's based on how you use that gift. Do you use that gift well? Do you live with that gift well? Do you build well with your gift? And if so, there's rewards. Right now, there's rewards. There's the reward of satisfaction of being a part of something that matters, some purpose, some meaning, where you contribute and see things transform around you. Man, that's a great reward to see that happen. More importantly, and even more overwhelmingly so, there's eternal rewards that are attached to this. But what really this is talking about is building the church. And if LifeBridge wants to be the Keystone Species in northern Colorado, then why would we not want to build up our church? Like, why would we not want to always be making this place better? Now, we're not interested in building up the church and making it better for our own gratification, or for us to be comfortable, or for us to be able to say, hey, look what we did, look how impressive we are. I've got no interest in that, and I hope you don't either. We're not trying to build a castle. We're trying to build a kingdom. And there's a difference between those two things. A castle's for personal use. It's for show, it's for opulence, it's for defense. Like, we're not interested in building a castle. We want to build the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven is exclusive. It's exclusive in that the only way to it is through Jesus Christ. That's it, the real Jesus. But the great news is it's entirely inclusive and that the real Jesus is for everyone. The kingdom of heaven is about him and it's about them. Them is everyone not named you. And the kingdom is always on offense. It's not playing defense. It's on offense. It's always trying to reach, always trying to serve, always trying to bless, always trying to transform, always trying to grow, and it grows by growing people. In our church, we are just a small local outpost in the kingdom of heaven. Why would we not want to constantly be making this place better? In all aspects. And when I say make it better, I mean our people. Make our culture better, our processes, our ministries, our groups, our environments, everything across the board. Every little detail, from picking up a piece of trash in the parking lot to creating better environments that help facilitate people's growth in their own personal relationship with Jesus. We want to make every single detail about our church better because the better our church gets, the more people we'll bless. The better our church gets, the more people our church will be able to bless. And it all starts with the foundation. I've spent time in some rough areas of Africa and South America, and if you've ever been to different parts of the world, especially the developing world, you know that building codes in a lot of those areas are not up to the same standards as the building codes here are in the United States. I mean, you can walk into a building, and I've done this more than once, where you walk into a building and the floor is dramatically slanted with big gaping cracks in it. Staircases are different shapes and sizes all the way up, so it makes that very interesting and challenging going up and down stairs. I have fallen more than once. Rebarb sticking out of random spots in the wall, and then you end up saying more than once, hey, don't touch that unless you're up to date with your tetanus. Didn't ever think I was going to have to say that before. And then at some point, when you're walking in a building like this, the thought pops into your head, is this building going to collapse on us? And the answer is, it might. It really might. I was touring a slum in Nairobi once, and we came up to this school that was being built. And the foundation of this school was a combination of rocks and crumbling cinder blocks stacked on top of each other on a mixture of dirt and sand. That was the foundation. And if the foundation of any building is not sound, that building's eventually going to have some serious problems. And that principle goes across the board. For you as an individual, your life, even for us as a church, if you or if we are built on the wrong foundation, eventually we're going to collapse. Jesus talks about this in Matthew 7. He's preaching to a group of people just like this, and he says, guys, you're going to get hit with storms. It's coming. You're going to go through some trials. You're going to have trouble in life. Hard stuff is going to happen. And when it does, not if, when it does, if your life is built on me, if the foundation of your life is built on me, then yeah, you're going to get hit by storms. And yes, tough stuff's going to happen. But you're going to stand strong. However, if you build your life on anything other than me, I don't care how great it is, how well it's marketed, how confident you are in it. If you build the foundation of your life on anything other than me, you will fall apart. Just like a house collapses when it gets hit by a storm if it's built on sand. So the question you got to ask yourself right now, personally for you, what foundation are you built on? Right now, what foundation are you built on? Is it a foundation of feelings? Feelings have really become a driving force today, and they're almost viewed as truth. You know, if I feel this way, then it must be true. Now, that's great. Like, feelings are great and all, but to build your foundation on feelings are constantly changing. And any engineer is going to tell you that it's a bad idea to build on something that's constantly changing. So if your foundation is your feelings, eventually that's going to fall apart, and you're going to fall apart. Or is your foundation a cocktail of spirituality? Man, I believe spiritual things. I'm a spiritual person. Let me take a little bit of this spirituality over here. Let me take a little bit of this religion over here. Let me take a little bit of this worldview over here. Let me take a little bit of this ideology over here, which is really syncretism. Let me put them all together in this cocktail. Everything but Jesus. Is that your foundation? Or is your foundation humanity? That we just need to believe in ourselves. That we just need men and women to come together to fix everything. And if we build on ourselves, then we can build a better tomorrow. Doesn't that sound like a cheesy campaign slogan? Humanism is a very popular building material. It's a very popular foundation. But all we have to do is look at history and know that it's going to fail us. That if humanism is our foundation, we will collapse in a really painful fashion. Just look back on history. Since the beginning of time, human beings have failed human beings over and over and over again. But for some reason, we still want to build on that foundation. Where's your foundation? Money. This is a longtime favorite, easy to point at. Is your foundation the pursuit of what you believe to be financial security and abundance? Is that your foundation? Or is it yourself? I just have to believe in me. I just have to be true to myself, and I have to follow my heart. You heard that before? Or I've got to do this. I've got to be the one that makes this happen. I'm strong enough. I can handle this. It's your foundation yourself. I got a friend that his neighbor across the street, huge house, successful guy, huge house, kind of a parade of homes type house, and it's got a big circular driveway. And right in the middle of that circular driveway is it's probably a 10-foot tall statue. So when you pull onto the property, it's the first thing you see. It's this massive statue. And the owner of the house had this statue put up, and it's a statue of himself. I kid you not. Just it gets even better. It gets even better. The statue is himself chiseling himself out of granite. And the inscription at the base of the statue says this: self-made man. No joke. Can't make this stuff up. What's ironic, it's ironic and it's sad, is that a few years ago, this guy lost everything. His marriage fell apart, businesses collapsed, lost the house, lost that statue. He had built himself upon himself, and he himself collapsed. I mean, this statue was supposed to be a statement of success, but in reality, it was a warning. It was a warning of impending disaster. Or is your foundation built on this? This is Isaiah chapter 28. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am placing a foundation stone, that's Jesus. I am placing a foundation stone in Jerusalem, a firm and tested stone. It is a precious cornerstone that is safe to build on. Whoever believes need never be shaken. If your foundation or if our foundation of a church is built on anything other than Jesus, then we will collapse when the troubles and trials and storms and struggles of life hit. I promise you that will happen. But if your foundation is Jesus, then you need never be shaken. Isn't that a great line from Isaiah? If your foundation is Jesus, you need never be shaken. The foundation of this church is Jesus. LifeBridge is 131 years old. It's an old church, is it not? This church started in 1891. Benjamin Harrison was president of the United States when this church started. Some of you are like, who's that? I didn't even know that was a president. Yeah, it's that old. It's that old. 131 years old. The only way a church can last this long is if the foundation is Jesus. Do you think this church has had some storms? Some troubles have come this way? Some of you have been around here for a long time. You've seen things happen. All of us saw what happened in the last 2 years. Storms are going to come. You know why we're still standing? Not because of anything that we've done, not because of any particular person. The only reason this church is still standing is because the foundation is Jesus. That's it. That's Isaiah 28 making a promise. That's Jesus making a promise in Matthew 7. So our foundation is set. And if we want to be the Keystone Species in northern Colorado, if we know that we will bless more and more people the better and better we get, then what are we building with? Because remember, we're always building. You're building as an individual, always. You're either growing and getting better or you're regressing and getting worse. We're the same way as a church. We are never static. We're always dynamic. The question we have to ask ourselves is, hey, are we building something that's going to last? Or are we building something that we want to pass on? Are we building something that's got real transformation coming from it? And the only way to answer that question, it just depends on what we're building with. Are we building with gold and silver and jewels? Because those things survive fire. Or are we building with hay, straw, and wood. Those things don't last with fire. 1 Corinthians 3 is pretty clear. One set of building materials is going to last, the other will not. So are we building with truth? Truth is real. There is absolute truth. And I know that's not a popular statement today at all, and I know some people will frown and mock and laugh at that and say there is no absolute truth. That alone right there, that's an absolute truth statement, right? There is absolute truth. Jesus, he is true. The story about Jesus, the gospel, is true. God's word is true. Truth gives stability, and it gives structure, and it gives direction. That's why we build with it. Truth is building with gold. Are we building with sacrifice? Jesus built his church with sacrifice. He sacrificed himself. Are we doing the same thing? Or I'm going to sacrifice what I want. I'm going to sacrifice my own preferences. I'm going to sacrifice what's comfortable to me. I'm going to sacrifice my time, my gifting, my money. I'm going to sacrifice so that more people get introduced to Jesus. I'm going to sacrifice so I can be closer to what he's doing. I'm going to be a sacrifice so that we see Northern Colorado transformed. Are we building with sacrifice? That's the original ingredient of the church. Sacrifice is building with silver. Are we building with things like encouragement? The book of Acts says multiple times that Paul went around to the different churches, building them up by encouraging them. That's how he built them up, by encouraging them. Hear me on this. You have no idea how powerful your words of encouragement are. You have no idea. Your words, and this isn't an overstatement, your words of encouragement have the ability not only to change someone's day, but actually change someone's life. Your words are that powerful. A mentor of mine told me that a leader, 51% of a leader's job is authentic encouragement. Leadership is influence. You have a level of influence. So are you using your influence to build someone else up or to build yourself up? I mean, just think, like, authentic encouragement will also give you more influence. It'll gain you more influence, which you're going to need if you have to tell people truth that's not popular at some point. I mean, think about it. If the culture of our church was constant, authentic encouragement, that would be intoxicating. People would want to be a part of that culture because that's a glimpse of the culture of heaven. And then the more people we have here a part of our culture, that means we have more people to mobilize. And the more people we mobilize, the more people we can serve and bless. That's multiplication. So go out of your way to give constant, authentic encouragement. Like my pastor growing up, I think I've told you guys this before. My pastor growing up told me that if people gave 3 authentic pieces of encouragement to different people every single day, that revival would happen. New life would happen. I don't think that's far off. Encouragement is building with jewels. Or are we building with apathy? Being apathetic is actually a building material for a church. And apathy can lead to injustice. Because if you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes, or you don't care to, injustice will follow that. Now, the problem with that is the church is supposed to be agents of justice because we are built on the foundation of a God who is all about justice. But apathy, all that does is take us backwards, and it breeds things like injustice. Man, if you and I, if we're apathetic to the mission, if we're apathetic to the fact that we all have an ownership stake in this place to move it forward so that people are blessed, so that things are transformed around us, then this church won't last. No church will last. Apathy is building with wood. Or are we building with consumerism? It's a very, very popular building material for a church, where the church is about me, it's for me, and it better fit my preferences or I'm out. We care about preferences more than purpose very easily, where the worship style better be what I like. There better be programs that I like and I can benefit from. And that pastor, when he preaches, he better be authentic, funny, intelligent, and say something that's good that lasts with me for the next 7 days. No pressure. Y'all have never done that to me. But consumerism, what it'll do is it will kill the effectiveness and the vitality of a church pretty quickly. Because we make it about me instead of him and about them. That's what consumerism does. And really, this has been going on in the American church for the past few decades. Maybe unknowingly, we've just said, let's build with consumerism because we see that it's working with businesses and it's working with marketing because we live in a consumeristic culture. Let's take what's working in our culture for businesses and marketing, let's apply it to the church so that we can have more people here, as if weekend attendance is the ultimate goal. But the problem with that is, if you build with consumerism, eventually you're going to teach people to leave. I think this is one of the reasons why it's hard for people across the states to get connected with a local church, is because we've taught people to believe that the church is about them or myself. It is about them, about myself. That it's about me to consume and not contribute, so that when something else comes along that's better to consume, kids' sports, or go hiking, go skiing, or I just want to rest because it's been a long week. When we've taught people to consume so they can go consume what they think is better. If the church builds with consumerism, the church will lose to consumerism. Consumerism is building with straw. Or are we building with defense? This is not football. Defense doesn't win championships. I mean, the Broncos got this right. They went out and got Russell Wilson. Let's play offense. Let's start throwing the ball around the field, right? This is the only bone I'm going to throw you, Broncos fans, so get excited about this, all right? I mean, I hope y'all do well. Just come in second place in the AFC, all right? But are we building with this? Is it an us versus them mentality? Or we're building a defensive front against the things that are going on in the world's values, the beliefs, stuff that's happening, how everything's shifting around right now. We're just trying to build a castle so we can defend ourselves from the world so we don't get that stuff on us. Is that what we're doing? But the church is never called to play defense. The church has never been called to isolate ourselves from the world. We're called to be Jesus' representatives in the world. But if we build with defense, if we isolate ourselves, we're never going to reach people. Transformation is never going to happen around us. The church will eventually die, and honestly, nobody around us will care. Defense is building with, hey. If we're constantly trying to make things better around here because we're focusing on everybody else, if we're focusing on mission, if we're constantly trying to make things better, it's going to help us introduce people to Jesus and lead them in their next steps with them, but also think about what we could pass on. If you're building a house and you do a bad job with the electrical or the plumbing or the insulation or the foundation, then eventually you're going to have some problems with that house, aren't you? Or you're just going to pass those problems on to whoever buys the house from you, whoever has it next. If we as a church, if we're not constantly trying to make things better, if we're not building with the right materials, and if we're not building on the right foundation, that's what we're passing on to our kids. What do we want to pass on to the next generation and the next generation after that? Man, I don't know what your story is, but I was insanely blessed. And that my home church passed on a good church to my generation. And that's shaped my life and my trajectory. I'm so incredibly grateful for it. And right now, the pandemic gave us an incredible opportunity, an incredible window, in that right now, we can build something that will last well after we're dead and gone. Only if we're building with the right things. Only if we're intentional to make things better. Only if we keep our foundation. And think about what that'll do to your influence, too. I mean, just imagine this. What if organizations and businesses all over northern Colorado loved to hire LifeBridge people? Like, maybe they wouldn't say it that way, but they love to hire LifeBridge people because, man, these people are all in. They sell out. They make things better around them. They make people around them better. They're humble. They're selfless. They bring hard work. They make the culture in our office better. Our customers love to be around them. Man, we love to hire LifeBridge people because they just make everything better. That can come from us placing value here, that we want to make things better here. And then we take that value, that principle, and we invest it into our relationships, into our homes, and into our friends, into our workplaces, into our schools, that we just make those things better too. And what that will do is that will give you more as an individual. It will give you more credibility. And man, we need credibility right now, because the more we try to make things better around here as a church, the more credibility we'll get with people out there. And we can point them to who's better at that point. The more we just kind of pass it off, if we have it's good enough attitude, if we're not willing to sacrifice, If we think, you know what, somebody else is going to take that, somebody else will own that, somebody else will serve there, somebody else will lead that, somebody else will focus on that detail, the people we're trying to reach and the people we're trying to grow are going to pick up on that. And they won't take us seriously. But if we are making things better just here and letting that value go out from us in every other circle that we're in, that's going to gain us more credibility. And the more credibility we have, the more influence we'll get. And the more influence we get, the more we'll earn the right to be heard. And we have the message that everybody needs to hear. Desperately, everybody needs to hear. Romans 10:14 says, how can they call on him, meaning Jesus, how can they call on him to be saved if they haven't believed in him? And how can they believe in him if they haven't heard about him? And how can they hear about him if nobody tells them? Right now, nobody listens. This is the climate that we live in right now. Nobody listens. We just yell back and forth at each other, shouting accusations and lobbing insults and trying to cancel this party and going at this party. The lines have been drawn. There's so much division. We just dig our heels in. Nobody wants to listen to anything. Maybe we let somebody speak, but we just do that so we can wait for them to be done. Then we can make our next point or shred their point. That's not listening. Right now, the church, this goes across the board, but for the church, we have to earn the right to be heard so that we can tell people the message that they desperately need to hear, that you and I desperately need to hear. We do that by making things better. Not only will that allow us to introduce people to Jesus and then lead them in their next steps with them, that's how we give people a glimpse of heaven. If people need a glimpse of heaven right now.